So I've gotten out of classic gaming consoles and classic gaming console reviews. I got tired of all the flaming and the fanboyism that goes on in the comments section when it was really just intended to be something that I did for fun. So I've decided to engage in what I call the Pentium project, which is a project to build a fairly high-end PC that you might have seen during each era of the Pentium processor. Back when Pentium was the top line processor in Intel's catalog. So to start off with, I have most of what I need, most of the parts that I need. I'm still waiting on a few things here and there. But I wanted to take a look at a few different things that I recently picked up from Newegg that I thought were pretty cool. First up, if you're going to have multiple PCs running, you're going to need a KVM switch. Now, I bought one for $5 at a thrift shop, but it didn't come with any cables. I kept searching the internet for cables, but everywhere that I shopped, whether it was eBay or Newegg, the cables would be like $25–30 a pop. And I'm sorry, I just wasn't spending $150 on KVM cables just to tinker with, ancient crusty old PCs. But I did manage to find some. You can get these at Newegg, very cheap. They're like $6, and so I had to wait like 6 months before I could even test out my KVM switch because I didn't have any cables. So I finally found these, and I ordered 4 sets because it's a 4-port switch, right? And I've already got 3 sets opened up, so I just wanted to open these up here. This is the last set. Again, they're like $6, and I was really surprised at the quality. I figured I was going to get a set of cables that would be kind of cheapy feeling and possibly not even work. I mean, what do you expect for $6? But so far, I've been pleasantly surprised. These cables, I don't even know who makes them. Manufactured by Belkin. So search for Belkin PS2 KVM cable on the Newegg search engine, and you should be able to find these. And the reason I went with Belkin is because the KVM switch is a Belkin OmniView, and so that way I would be pretty sure that the cables would be the right ones, because as you can see, the VGA cable is male to female, right? Some cables are different. Some KVM switches are different. They might have 2 female ends, for example. And if you have the wrong cable, then you have to get into gender adapters and things like that, and that's just a pain in the neck. So you look at these here. These are really thick, quality feeling cables. They're soft, but still thick and heavy duty feeling. Again, I was really surprised at what I got for $6 plus shipping. Again, they came in that little bag there. No frills, no manuals or anything silly like that. I don't know why you would need a manual for some KVM cables. And obviously the monitor and PS2 keyboard and mouse cables, they come separately. Lengthwise, it's not too bad. I mean, you're not going to run it across the room, but you shouldn't have any trouble as long as the PCs are fairly nearby. You really won't have a lot of trouble. Naturally, they're all the same length, so obviously Belkin, they did put a little bit of thought into these. So this is really cool. These things, they're cheap and really solid, heavy-duty feel to those cables. Really very happy. The next thing I want to look at, if you're going to refurbish old PCs, one of the places you should start would be your power supply. And so for that end, for the ATX machines, I went with Seasonic. Seasonic, as you know, are the OEM manufacturer for many of the other power supply companies out there, for example, Corsair or Cooler Master, so on and so forth. Seasonic are the ones who actually make them. So I thought, why not start at the source? That way you get an OEM power supply that doesn't cost a lot of money, because again, we're tinkering with older PCs here, Pentium 1 through to Pentium 4. Really don't want to be spending a whole boatload of cash on power supplies. But I still wanted something good that would last for years. So for the ATX machines, I went with Seasonic. Now, here's how they came. This is funny. They came in a box, obviously, Newegg. And I opened up the box. I've already taken one out. And so we got the airbags, which, I mean, you know, ridiculous. Of course, my packing slip. Naturally, you know, a bunch of holiday stuff, holiday sales brochures and stuff like that. But anyway, get that aside. And here's how the power supplies come. Wrapped in bubble wrap. Just like this. And remember, people, these are OEM power supplies. That means there's no power cords, there's no documentation. And if you look in the reviews for these, this is the SS300ET. There's an SS300ES, which I would advise you to stay away from because the ES models only have an 80 millimeter fan, while the ET models, like this one here, I've already got one unwrapped, they come with a 120 millimeter fan, which is going to obviously give you quieter operation. I don't know why. They have two separate lines for their OEM power supplies. One is ES, one is ET, and obviously the model number corresponds to the maximum wattage rating. This case being 300 watts, which is more than enough for any Pentium 1 through to Pentium 4 class machine. Again, there's the 120 millimeter fan. There's the back. It's nicely vented. Very heavy, which is usually the first sign of at least a quality power supply before you even power it up or measure it or anything. The connectors. Again, being an OEM power supply, I was pleasantly surprised. It comes with just about every connector that you could possibly want for a PC. I mean, there's a floppy drive connector, and I like having that. I'm tired of things like power supply manufacturers omitting different technologies and things just because it's quote-unquote outdated. But then you're not conforming to the standard set by the PC industry. So I like knowing that if I order an OEM supply from Seasonic, if I decide I want to use a floppy drive, that's my business. And I'm glad they at least include the power connector. Likewise with the Molex connectors. If you don't like the Molex connectors, then cut them off. You know, I'm glad that they're in there. There's two Molex. Oh no, wait a minute. There we go. There's 4 Molex connectors, more than you could possibly need, I think, for any PC that you might build. There's a floppy connector. The ad says it's a 20, or the description on the website says it's a 20+4 ATX connector, but that's wrong. This is a 24-pin connector. So using it with older 20-pin motherboards, I might have to get an adapter, or sometimes you can just kind of squeeze it on, but if there's any RAM or anything nearby, that might interfere with it. 4-pin P4 connector, as they call it, or CPU connector. And of course, 4 SATA power connectors. So you might be wondering, well, where's the PCI Express connector? Well, very simply put, Seasonic doesn't recommend that you run a graphics card or any type of high-end graphics card on their 300-watt power supply. So it doesn't come with a PCI Express connector. But if you step up to, I believe, the 500-watt version comes with PCI Express connector. So if you are shopping for these Seasonic power supplies and you want to put it in a gaming rig or a more modern rig, don't worry. The 500 and 600-watt power supplies do come with PCI Express connectors. But, again, I didn't need anything that high wattage for what I'm doing here. Again, this will be for the Pentium 2, 3, and 4 builds. For my older builds, which is Pentium 1, as well as a 486 I've been tinkering with, I found this here from Newegg. This is from Startech.com, and you can see from their motto is hard to find, made easy. Literally, if you go to Startech.com's website, they have more hard to find stuff, obsolete connectors, converters, you name it. There's tons and tons of stuff. If you need something for a PC and you can't find it anywhere else, go to Startech.com. So when you open up the box, this isn't OEM packaging, so you actually do get some documentation. And an added bonus, because I was kind of running short, power cords. So when you take this out of the box, of course, it's all bubble wrapped. Not as much as the Seasonic supplies, thank God. So when we get these out of their bubble wrap, again, I was pleasantly surprised. If you look on the box, it is stated to be a 230 watt AT computer power supply. Now, from Startech.com not being like a high-end power supply manufacturer, or not being known to be, I was really surprised when I picked this up. This actually weighs about the same as the 300 watt unit that I got from Seasonic. So it is pretty hefty. It's got that new electronic smell to it. And actually, it almost smells burnt. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But again, we're going to be installing it and testing it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 300 watt ATX supply in my Pentium 4 and then run the OCCT power supply stress test at 12 or 24 hours, whatever I decide, just to make sure it's going to be good and stable. And same thing with the AT supply. It's going to go in the Pentium 1, and I'll probably just run Prime 95 or something like that for a few hours just to make sure that everything's going to be good to go. So, typical of an AT power supply. Again, they used 80mm fans back then, which, you know, they tend to be noisier than your standard 120mm fans that we use nowadays. But, you know, whatever. It's best you can get. I mean, it's surprising that you can still get brand new AT power supplies, so I'm kind of glad. Of course, your power switch, remember these from the old days? And of course, it's nice and they've got it all wrapped up so you don't accidentally touch it with a screwdriver and blast yourself out with 120 volts. Because remember, these are live. These power connectors that are live with 120 volts. Some kind of grounding cable. I don't know. Of course, these are your motherboard connectors, the old style for AT motherboards. And as far as other types of connectors, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Molex connectors, it looks like. I'm not sure what these extra little connectors are. I've never seen those before. They go on the motherboard somewhere. Could be for some kind of sleep mode or something. I'm not sure. And, of course, 2 floppy power connectors, because PCs back from the AT days could oftentimes have 2 floppy drives. Again, nothing special. It is what it is. For current, this one is rated for, on the positive 12 volt main, it's 9 amps, and on the 5 volt main, it's 23 amps. That's actually typical of older style computers, because I believe, I'm not all that familiar with the exact specs, but I believe that the CPU was on the 5 volt main and would tend to use more current than anything else in the system. So with older power supplies, you tended to get a higher amperage rating on the 5 volt main that you would get on the 12 volt main. Obviously, on modern day power supplies, that's a little bit different. On the Seasonic, this one has dual 12 volt mains. Again, some people, I don't know if I can get that in there, if you'll be able to see it or not. It's not the greatest webcam in the world. No, so I'll just tell you what it is. There's dual 12 volt rails in this power supply. Each one is rated at 17 amps, so for a total 34 amps on the 12 volt and 20 amps on the 5 volt. So again, modern power supplies are rated higher on the 12 volt than on the 5 volt, and then the older supplies are the other way around. So I thought that was pretty cool that I got all that. So anyhow, I'm going to start on the project and get all this stuff put together. I'm going to test these power supplies, and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so I've been running the OCCT benchmark on the Pentium 4 computer that I put in one of the Seasonic power supplies, 300 watts. It's been running for a day and 20 hours. I'd say it's pretty safe to say that that the system's stable. I don't think running it any longer is going to make much of a difference. Don't get a very high frame rate on a Pentium 4, but does the job anyway. But like I said, I've been running the power supply test, so we're going to finally shut that down. I think a day and 20 hours is enough. Give this poor old thing a break. One of the things I like by putting this machine in a new case, during the test I noticed that the CPU fan wasn't running at 100% at all times. It would spin up and then spin down a bit. So that basically means that you've got good contact with your fan and your CPU and some good airflow. Here's the machine down here. It's in a Rosewill Ranger M case. Before I got interrupted with kids, as I was saying, I have that machine in a Rosewill Ranger M case. These are really cool. They're inexpensive. It's got a 120mm fan in the front, and I believe an 80mm exhaust fan. There's tons of airflow, and I think that's part of the reason why the CPU fan doesn't have to spin at 100% at all times, even though it was at 100% utilization for the past, I don't know, 44 hours. As far as the AT power supply goes, I installed it in a Pentium 1 233. Because I'm running Windows NT 4, I couldn't run OCCT. In fact, I couldn't even get Prime 95 to run, so I had to dig around on the internet a bit, and I found Stress My PC 2.66, which has no trouble running at all under Windows NT 4. We have Task Manager here. We're at 100% CPU usage. It's been like this for at least 36 hours. I think I turned it on a few hours after I turned on OCCT. It doesn't time how long you've had it running, but like I said, it's been 100%. So this is the 200 or the Startech.com power supply, which was rated at 230 watts. Some of these power supplies, they're amazing. The ratings they have. This is the AT supply, supposedly rated at 250 watts, but it weighs next to nothing. I mean, this thing, you couldn't even use it as a paperweight. It's so light in comparison to the Startech supply that I replaced it with. This is much heavier, even though it's rated for about the same amount of power. It's the difference between a quality power supply and a cheap one. Now, you know, for an old machine, that power supply probably was more than plenty, but you know, you want something that's maybe going to last a while and protect your components. This is the ATX supply that came out of the Pentium 4 PowerLink. It again, it weighs next to nothing. These cheap supplies. I mean, in comparison to the Seasonic supply that I ended up putting in there, which, you know, you can actually hurt your arm picking this thing up. It weighs almost a ton. So far so good. I'm very happy with these power supplies. I predict these machines will last quite a few more years, having nice clean power connected to them.